Okay, well, let's go ahead and look at getting started. I apologize about that. Had to restart the computer. Computer was convinced it wanted to run a bunch of updates. So, anyway, we're back. That's what matters. Okay, so welcome to Rebuilding Rails. This is going to be the last chapter, chapter 9, where we're going to be talking about routing. Okay, so with that said, we'll go ahead and jump in. And of course, at any time, feel free to ask questions over in the chat, over in the Discord, or anywhere, and I will cover those. Okay. So this particular chapter is going to be covering routing and how exactly that's going to work. So of course, we have the sample source, and if you're looking for the page number, we are currently on page 125. So we start out with a few examples of what a router might do. Like, let's say we have this URL that the book mentions. How exactly would that turn into an actual action and an actual web page that's going to be displayed? If we look back at chapter 2, we split the string for the URL, but as the book mentions, not very configurable, not very useful, except for very rudimentary things. Whereas it says that a real route might look something a little bit more like, say, this. Fine quality there. So we might end up with something more like that for an actual routing system. The book mentions actions don't always follow the paradigm of controller, action, ID, params. And in this case, we can see that with latitude, longitude, and I'm assuming radius right there. Noah's mentioned before that for the most part, what he's doing here is shortening up URLs that way, well, shortening up strings that way it can fit into the text there. So I'll use some more long form of this. Okay. So match in Rails is the most versatile of your routing helpers. Also, it's probably the least commonly used. You'd probably be more familiar with something like resource people or person or something like that, or any type of namespacing or stuff like that if you've used Rails for any amount of time. So what we're going to be doing in this chapter is taking a look at how exactly do things like this work and how can we make our own routing system flexible enough to handle that. Okay. So we're on page 126 over here. So we're going over some review, mentioning that rack apps look a lot like a method or a proc, and some of the tricks we have there, going back to chapter 8 and middleware, as well as a few uses for those. Let's see here. And then we'll need to pass extra parameters through the controller action. Let's see here. If we go back to the rulers lib rulers, which we're currently looking at, rulers lib rulers. we have our own custom variant of some of this. And of course, I've done some things over the last few lessons of playing around with this. So this is where we're currently at. Okay. So instead of what we're doing in here, I'm going to do myself a little bit of a favor. We'll call this application old just to have what we used to have, and then we'll put a couple lines up above that for the new application that the chapter is going to do. Man, I can't type today. So we got that, we got that. Actually, let's just copy that explicitly. That way we don't have anything weird going on in there. Okay, so we have the new application, and if we go into rulers, lib, rulers controller, I'm going to be playing with this a little bit. I'm probably going to be getting rid of that later, but anyway. This is on page 128 and page 129. We're adding running params there. I'm going to add a reader on that just so we have that. I mean, yes, you could technically have these all in one line, but the way that I see this is these are unique method invocations. So if I ever happen to want to use something like sorbet to type these, it's much easier to put something on top of it. Anyway, let's see here. So dispatch. Ooh, looks like that's going to be a new method then. Let's see what we got in here. Writing params equals writing params. Self-send action for the text. Get response. What do we want to get? Okay, so if we have a response, we want status, headers, and then the body. I'm going to break that up a little bit. Then on this one, we're going to have 200 HTML content type, and text flatten. Got that. Let's see what else I have in here. So they call this ACT in here. I'm going to make those names a little bit more verbose. Did I miss an N somewhere in there? Comma. I guess I'll figure out if I missed an N somewhere in there. And we are on page 129 if you're following along. Okay, so action would be a proc. Okay, and then we have a parameters method somewhere down here. Let's see what we got. Request.params. Merge routing params. And we can break this up into a few lines real quick. I'm going to probably keep the tap on there because it's still useful for debugging stuff, but it works. Okay. Okay, and again, we're on page 129 over here of Rebuilding Rails. So let's take a look at some of this stuff of what we're doing here. So dispatch takes an action name and routing params, which should be additional params coming in from the router. So what that's probably doing, and what the book is probably going to mention here in a second, is whenever we have something like, say, latitude, longitude, radius being passed in as segments of the URL, that's going to show up in routing params by those names, which then gets merged into params by those names. That way you can call them as such. Okay, let's see here. So rack, map, and controllers. We're going to build our own map over here, mentioning back to chapter 8. It's page 130. Let's see here. So best quotes, config RU. Let's head back over here. Okay, so we got that. Now, what exactly are we wanting to do? Require config application, best quotes application new. Use rack map to serve the index action from the root. Okay. So it looks like we're going to be doing routes right here. So map this. And then we'll probably need to make that map method somewhere. I need to find where that's at. Quotes controller action index. Okay, so we got that. Let's try this real quick. I still have a lot of these things in there. Let's see here. So that's the view renderer. What exactly do I have all debugging statements in? render response. I bet it's probably somewhere in render. Yep. Okay. So that's nice and all, but let's comment that out because that's getting noisy. Actually, wait, what was that restart? Aha, rerun. So for those of you who don't know what I was doing there, that is Control R, which allows me to back search. And if I keep hitting Control R, then that's going to allow me to go back through my history a little bit. Useful. Anyway, so we have that. Okay, let's go back over to the book. We're on page 130 and now on page 131. Let's see here. So configuring the router. Okay, so Rails router is all about match, complicated stuff like resources built on top of it. So match is kind of our primitive. Everything else we can build on top of that. Great. Let's see what we got. So the book mentions a whole bunch of example things here. So let's go ahead and grab some of the examples from there, just so we have that. More of a stylistic thing, but preferences. Personally, though, if we do this, I kind of prefer to do this. This is more of me for readability, but it doesn't actually matter. Okay. So yeah, match is actually really powerful, like controller, action, ID, via whatever method, whatever controller, routing it to that, getting REST parameters on there using star, matching particular namespaces, giving defaults for IDs, going straight to a rack application even, or using a whole lot of things like this where we can even constrain it on regex. That said, if we do this, we also want to make sure to do \a/z instead of that, just in case someone sneaks some new lines in there for something pesky. Anyway, not big deal. Let's see here. Yep, so these would be all of the routing parameters. Oh, what am I doing? I shouldn't save that. No, go away. Yes, Ruby is very complicated to parse. Let's see here. Rulers, lib rulers, routing. Okay, let's take a look into that. Routing, so what do we have here? Okay, we have the path. I'm going to take that out for now. Okay, so we currently have that, but we want to add something else in here. Got that. Okay. So rules, I'm guessing, are all these various segments up here. Match is probably going to be whether or not this actually matches that. Check URL. I'm going to see what we're doing here. So we got this over here. Let's see what else we're going to do. Okay, so we will ignore that for now. That takes a block function. Let's see where we're going with this one. is an or equals there. Okay, so in the context of the route object, evaluate that block. And I'm guessing the route object is going to be similar to, let's grab a couple of these actually, just for sake of examples here. Okay. So in the context of that, get rack hat of the environment. Okay, let's see here. Let's grab both of those. Okay, so the route object is going to have multiple routes on there. Got it. Match and check URL don't do anything yet, but those are probably going to be where we get a lot of our actual implementation routes here. And again, if you have any questions here, feel free to chime in the chat or anywhere else. Okay. So page 133 is where we're at right now. We're going to go back to the best quotes config RU. I'm just going to put scratchpad there. That way we have that. Okay. So let's see here. Config RU. Let's see what it should be looking like. Okay. Actually, let's do this over here, just so we have that. Best quotes application new. Right, content type. Okay. So I'll copy over the comment from there, which reference to chapter 8 and some middleware stuff we were doing. Okay. And I'm going to, I'll type it out. So here are going to be our routes. So base path is going to go to index. We're going to have a sub app, which is going to route to that. Okay. Control ID action, and we are on page 134 right now. Okay, so this is what it should eventually end up looking like. yeah, that's going to crash because we haven't implemented it. Okay. So you might wonder, why exactly are the rules an array instead of something which might be more efficient? That's because the order is very, very important here. Let's close that and that and that. Don't need those. So let's take a look at specifically what we're going on here. We're going by specificity, which is most specific, which is nothing, and then sub app, and then all of our default routes, which is we had nothing better to do or we don't know what to do. So here are kind of a catch-all type of things. So there is some relevancy in that. Okay. So this is my cheat for commenting the entire thing. So now that'll go back to the old version of it. That'll work. I can take off this stuff later. It doesn't matter. Okay. It's also mentioning that we could use resource or root and make all these work. Considering that resource is effectively using match and building blocks on top of those, yes, that's very possible. Okay, going on to page 135. Let's see what we got here. So let's go ahead and take a look at that match method real quick. Okay. So we're on page 135. Okay. Options is equal to a hash. If the last argument happens to be a hash, we'll do that. Okay. Make sure that we have a default in case we don't. Okay, so options are optional. I mean, technically we could take these two lines and this is effectively what we're saying. If args last is a hash, so we'll rewrite that just a little bit so we can explain it. So if we happen to go back to here and we see the last argument is a hash, that would be our options or our route parameters where this is. Okay. I mean, technically we could, let's leave that alone. There are always little things you might be able to improve or make clear or anything else like that, but we could be here all day if we're playing with that. Destination is equal to nil. If there are no args, let's explicitly set it to nil. Otherwise, we can set it to the next argument there. So what we're doing is we're treating this as a stack where args is going to be something like that. Hello, hello, how you doing today? Okay. Single quotes. Heh. Okay, so I'm being a little bit verbose here, but it is useful just to see exactly what it's doing while we're talking through it. Okay. Let's call this wrap parts. URL parts. We are on page 135 still. So we're using a select bang in there, but technically, let's just inline that real quick. Reject any of the empties in there. Okay. Ooh, this looks exciting. What do we got here? Variables is equal to this. Actually, tell you what. No, that might not be as easy to pattern match against. I thought about it. It'd be nice if we had that 3.2ism. I'm gonna leave that alone. Let's just say sigil. Nah, let's leave it alone. It's not worth it. Okay, so we do have this regex part here. I'm going to actually make that into a constant. Just so we have a name on that. Okay. So we have that. Yeah, let's name a few more of these. We have alphanumeric segment there. We have let's not call it. Let's call it a matcher. Okay. Let's try this. Variable segment, rest segment. It's not really a variable matcher. As much as it's that. So with that, we don't need this. We can say instead case part when the reason I'm doing this is just so we have a name for some of these concepts. So we have a variable segment, rest segment, so what we're doing is we're saying in the case where it's a variable such as that, in that case, it would be a literal. So we'll save that for now. Okay, so we have the regex parts. There's that. Doing the regex parts with slash. That way we have that reconstituted. And then we could say push onto the rules. New regex. That. Actually, now let's go ahead and use the new Ruby 3. I want to say it's 3.1. This is shorthand hash syntax because we happen to be using the same name. We can do this. Why not? That way we can have all these on there. Okay, so we got that. So I will say the book is using some shorthand for there of vars, dest, and options is actually full text. So I will have to be careful of that. And instead of using caret and $sign for beginning and end, that can have some weird behavior with new lines. So I'm going to go ahead and use this, which is literal start and literal end. Let's see here. Yep, so the book is going through and explaining each one of these. So let's go back over and explain what exactly we're doing. So again, options is saying if the last one is a hash, kind of like this up here, then we have options, otherwise default that to a hash and make sure we have a default option. The next is destination, which is if it happens to have where it's going, go ahead and pop that onto there. If there's still arguments, then we have something weird we should stop. Otherwise, we're going to take a look at the URL, split it by slashes, and rejecting the empty segments. we're going to capture all the names of the variables. Like let's say we have colon controller. That means we have a variable named controller we're going to be doing something with. Okay, so when we have a variable segment, which is something starting with colon, or a rest segment, we're going to do something special with that. Shove those names onto variables, and then give back something which matches all alphanumeric characters, or something which matches a rest. So dot colon, yep. Otherwise, it's literal, and we'll treat it as such. And then once we're done there, we'll take the regex parse, join them back together with a slash, and make a regex out of that. And then we're going to push onto the rules all of these options. Okay, so check URL is going to be what we're actually going to do here. So let's see here. So we have all the rules. Let's go ahead and deconstruct these into the variable components, just because I kind of want those. So now we have access to all those directly. Let's see here, so that's a longer match on there. So what we can do is we can say next unless regex happens to match the URL that was passed in. Okay, so we have that. Params would be equal to duplicating the default options. Of each of the variables. Right, we actually do need the captures. So we'll switch over to that. Treat those by index. Okay. We have a destination. So we don't currently have that method. I'm assuming we're going to write that in a second. Okay. So we got that, we got that. We have the control, we have the action. There's probably going to be a, okay, yeah, we're writing get destination method after this. Gotcha. Actually, tell you what, let's try this instead. Destination or equals this. Okay, so we got both of those. Okay, so if we have that, otherwise we're going to return back nil. So the reason we want to return back nil is because if we don't, at each is going to return back the array. So let's say I did, doesn't matter what's inside the block, it's going to return back that array. So if we don't put nil here explicitly, that's going to just return back the array, which is probably going to break something. Okay, so let's take a look at that get destination. This is on page 137. Okay, so this first line is saying in the case we have, let's go ahead and minimize match real quick because that's pretty long. In the case where we happen to have my rack application up here like that, what it's wanting to do is say that responds to call, so it's its own application. Go ahead and use that. Let's see here. I'm not sure exactly what we have here. Okay, so we're getting the controller and the, you know, let's put some names on here. Just so we have access to that. Okay, so we'll guard statement that, and then we're going to have controller name is equal to let's go and put that on there. We have a name for it. Controller name. Action name. Did I name the action name? Yes, I named the action name. Okay, and we're on page 137 for reference. initialize that. Okay. Controller name controller. Controller action names, routing params. Okay. So eventually we'll be able to do pattern matching against some of these regex. That's a 3.2 ism, but I'm not going to get into that too much. Okay. So what we're doing here is we're going through check URL, and we're going through each one of these rules. We're using right-hand assignment to extract the regular expression, the variables, the destination, and the options. And then what we're doing is we're getting the match data from matching against that regex using the URL. If there is no match data, next, because that's not the route that we're looking for. Otherwise, we want the params to be a duplication of the default. That way we can put more things on there. And then we're going to go through the match data for each one of the segments in order to say that that variable is equal to whatever the positional is on that. Okay. And then we're getting the controller and the action out of the params. If there is no destination, we're going to override that, and then we're going to get the destination of that destination, whether that be something callable or whether that just be param. Well, anyway. And then we're going to go into get destination. If it has to respond to call, it's a sub application, it's a proc, it's a something, we don't know, but it can be called. So let's go ahead and do that. Otherwise, we're going to get the match data out of the controller action matcher, which is going to match against controller pound action, whatever that happens to be. Okay. If we don't have any match data, then we're going to raise an exception because this rule is not actually working properly. And then we're going to take the controller name, we're going to capitalize it, we're going to get the action name, and then we're going to get the controller by its constant name, and then we're going to call an action on that using action name using those routing parameters. Okay. Let's see if I have messed this up. Probably. Well, it's more fun that way. Okay, so let's comment that out. Comment these out real quick. Okay, let's see how bad this is. Okay, best quotes, uninitialized, constant, best quotes. Did I happen to, yes, I uncomment that. I do need that. Okay, let's see what bricks. If that works the first time, I will be surprised and very slightly worried. Haha, undefined method, environment. And this would be at routing line 116. Let's see what we got here. 116, 116, 116, env. Aha. See, this is why I shouldn't shorten everything. Okay, let's relaunch that. Not sure why that hates me so much. Anyway, undefined method call. And this would be at rulers line 26. Get rack app. Where's get rack app being? Okay. Where do we get rack app from? Get rack app is over here. Application. Let's see what I managed to mess up. Okay. that. We got that. The risk with any type of refactoring playing with this is that I might get something wrong, and you can imagine how well that works. Okay, so we'll do that. Go ahead and restart that. I'm not sure why it doesn't like restarting. Right, because that's in the actual application instead of that. Let's see what we got. Okay, undefined method call. So we have all those. We have path slash. We have the route object. Route object, check URL. Okay. So we obviously have a route object, so that's not the problem. It's probably because I'm being a little bit too clever with some of the routing stuff, which is gonna hurt. Okay, let's see what I have done here. Get destination, so it's hitting that. I mean, I know those regexes are wrong. Let's go back over into routing where I'm assembling that on match. Let's give it a more permissive. See if that helps. Okay. So that is definitely not hitting the right thing. So we have hello sub app. Let's go back over to this. Match sub app. Let's put an explicit slash afterwards. Yep, so get sub app is matching everything. Okay. So quotes index is matching that. Routing, okay. Okay, so I don't need this anymore because I knew that one. Okay, so let's save that. So whenever we're assembling this, the issue is going to be in the rules we have. Match anything on here, it's getting ABAP, so something's broken there. Let's make sure that I have those routes correct. That's probably page 135, wasn't it? Ah, there's a slash in there. Okay. So that's what that is. So whenever we're assembling the regex up here, there's actually a slash right there. So that would change things. Let's try that. Restart that. Okay, so that works. Let's restart that so it gets a rule. Okay. So we'll hit with slash. Something is hitting sub app, which should not be happening. I mean, up app is probably my hint there. Let's go back and check against that. So we're going to have the matcher here. We have parts. So regex parts would be europarts.map. We have part. Match against that. Don't care about destination. Don't care about options or that. Okay. Rest segment is going to be anything which starts with. Oh, right. That's a problem with using a regex, is that this is a special character. Silly me. Okay. That should fix it. See, this is why we don't try to be clever. Okay. No destination something. That should work. And that should work for sub app. Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, so that puts us back at about page 137 and 138. And I think that about got it. So that takes us through all the major segments there. So eventually in Ruby 3.2, we're going to have the ability to deconstruct on regex. So let's say that we had a new regex, and this is experimental 3.2 ism, and the regex match was something along the lines of sigil, which could either be a colon or a star. And then we would happen to have afterwards variable, which could be anything else. Okay, so if we had that, we could do something more along the lines of, say, sigil variable. And the reason we'd have variable there is because variable would give that as a local variable only in this context. So that would be effectively what would happen there. And if we actually wanted to, actually, let's pull this into a separate file just so that's not as much of a mess. Let's see here. So regex match data. match data. It's just match data, isn't it? Yeah. So effectively, what deconstructing on regex is going to do is, actually, let's give that a name real quick. And I would not normally advocate for monkey patching, but this is more of to demonstrate what 3.2 is about to give us, which is nice. Deconstruct keys. So what this is going to do is named captures. Make those into symbols. So what this is doing is saying, let's go ahead and grab the data out of there. So I happen to do that. Then we could do something like that. So we could substitute this out for 3.2, but I'm going to leave it alone. Anyway, I think that about gets us through all of the routing code and everything else in this chapter. So that'll probably wrap us about up unless anyone has any questions or anything they'd like to cover. And then we can take a look into that. But otherwise, I think that's about it. Well, thank you so much for joining me on these last few months on rebuilding Rails. This is going to wrap up our course on that. It's been fun. We will be looking on the Ruby Learning Center Discord about which things we should look at next. There are some topics about Rails performance, about rebuilding Git, about several other intermediate grade books, as that's what people voted for. If you are looking for us, you can find us at rubylearning.dev, and you can find links to the Discord community, book list, or what classes we're currently doing. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time, and we will call it there. Have a great day, everyone.